legislator, and most recently as the Senate Republican leader. So with that, we'd like to get our meeting started and welcome Jim.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for letting me be here. Let me tell you a little bit about me for those of you who don't know. I left the state legislature in 2004, and in my mind I was done with politics and done with government service. I had spent the better part of 24 years. I worked for President Reagan. I served in the Assembly as the Assembly leader. I served in the Senate as the Senate leader. And, you know, I'm not one of those who gets a government pension. So when I left the Senate in 2004, I went into the wealth creation stage of my life. And for 10 years, I was quite happy. I own 2 small businesses. One I own myself, the other I own with 26 business partners. And I enjoyed making money and providing for my future. I was concerned about what I saw happening to our party, but I thought I had done my time. And it was time for somebody else to step up. My concern turned to horror in November of 2012. Not because I was surprised that Barack Obama was reelected president. That didn't surprise me. I've had a chance to vote for the man twice. I voted against him twice. And by the way, I think history is going to record that I did the right thing. I actually thought I'd go to my grave thinking Jimmy Carter was the worst president in my lifetime, but I've had to rethink that. But what I saw happening was that our party had gotten away from the basics of what it takes to win elections. Let me be real clear. I am an anti-tax, small government, local control Republican. I am a conservative. My record in the state legislature reflects that. But I was concerned that our party basically became a debating society and we got away from the nuts and bolts of winning elections. Now, Mitt Romney lost by plus 23 in California in 2012. That's plus 23. That's on a scale that only has 100. And you only get 100% if you run unopposed. So plus 23 is a big loss. And so we lost congressional seats in California primarily because I think Mitt Romney took them down. Nothing personal against Mitt Romney. I'm 6'4". I weigh a little over 300 pounds. And if we take the best swimmer in the room and we take you out to the ocean and shoot me and tie my dead weight to you, trust me, I'm going to take you to the bottom, because 300 pounds of Brulte dead weight is going to take even the best swimmer down. So I don't think we could have changed the outcome of those congressional races. And we lost supermajority control of the Senate, and I didn't think we could change the outcome of that. In fact, in February or March of 2012, I told the LA Times, I don't like these districts. I think Democrats are going to get a supermajority. But do you know what? We gave away 3 assembly seats. We gave away 3 assembly seats because we didn't research our candidates, we didn't have good ballot integrity, and we didn't do the nuts and bolts necessary. And I'm 58. I don't get upset about elections that we're not supposed to win, but when we give away elections because we're not doing what it takes to win, that's a mistake. And let me tell you what my view of a political party is, so you're all very, very clear. I think there's only one role for a political party, and that's to take control of the government, to move your agenda for the benefit of the people in the city, state, county, or nation. That's the only purpose of a political party. And so I got a couple of calls from some of my friends in Washington. I don't know if you know my friend Tom McClintock. Tom called me and accused me of being a capitalist, which I thought was interesting. He said, I can't believe that you're more interested in making money than helping fix our party.
Oh my gosh.
And I thought that was an interesting discussion because Tom's a capitalist. And I got a call from Darrell Issa, who also said, you know, nice of you to do what you're doing, but the party's in trouble. And so I ran for party chair and I was elected chairman of the party. Let me tell you what I found. I found a party that was $1.3 million in debt.
Wow.
I found a party that stopped answering emails July 3rd of 2012. We had 40,000 unanswered emails.
Wow.
I went to the website of the California Republican Party and I found the office address and phone number of the Sacramento office. That was in March of 13. That office was closed in 2012. We got away from doing what it takes to win elections. So let me be real clear as to how I define my role. There are millions of Republicans in California. I'm not the party chair who's going to do talk radio. I'm not the party chair who's going to spend time debating issues. If you want to have someone debate federal issues, there are 15 Republicans in Congress. They're all quite capable of explaining their position on issues. I'm not going to talk about state issues. There are 25 Republicans in the Assembly and 12 Republicans in the Senate, and they're quite capable of talking about state issues. I'm the guy that's going to keep my head down, raise money, recruit volunteers, walk precincts, so we can start the process of taking this state back. Because let me tell you something, I know those Democrats in Sacramento. Am I on TV just so I know? This is going to sound crazy, but do you know when you grade on the curve, Jerry Brown's actually the most conservative elected Democrat in Sacramento, and that ought to scare the hell out of all of you. And if you think I'm wrong, let me introduce you to Gavin Newsom, the former mayor of San Francisco, who is a conservative compared to Kamala Harris, the Attorney General of California. So at this point in time, the California Republican Party and the Republican Party at this point in time is the best hope to fix this state. And so I'm working hard to do the nuts and bolts so we can win elections. I don't want to tell you who you ought to support. I think voters ought to decide which Republicans get support. And it's my job then to help those Republicans get over the finish line. So that's kind of how I define my role. Some people say, well, you ought to talk about policy. You know what? My predecessor talked about policy, but he didn't raise money. Some people say you ought to debate issues. I'd rather walk precincts. I think candidates and elected officials ought to talk about issues, and party leaders should not be seen and they should not be heard. They ought to do the hard work of winning elections. So that's how I define my role. Now what I want to do is, in the few minutes I have left, I put together a presentation, and I want to talk about why 2014 can be an unbelievably good year for us if we're focused on doing what it takes to win. And so if you will, let me just walk through a couple of these slides, and then I'm happy to answer any questions that you have, because I'm pleased to get the invite to come and share with you. First slide. Next slide. For the last 10 years, voters have thought the country was going in the wrong direction. In fact, in March, when we asked voters, and my friends back in Washington put these slides together. They're kind of a compilation of national polls, but I think you'll find them interesting and instructive. 65%, almost 7 out of 10 Americans believe the country's on the wrong track. And by the way, they've thought the country's on the wrong track for 10 years. In the history of modern polling, we have not had 10 years in a row where people think the country's on the wrong track. Now, why is that important? Because along with presidential job approval, wrong track is the single biggest determinant in which party does well in midterm elections. So the bad news is 65 out of every 100 Americans think the country's on the wrong track. That's the bad news. For us, it means that people are more than likely to take a look at us because we're not in the White House. Wrong track is big, very, very important. Next slide. The president's job approval is upside down. The last slide is, I think, was his March. No, come back. 54% disapprove of the job the president's doing, 41% approve. That means over half think he's doing a bad job. Why is that important? Because along with right track, wrong track, presidential job approval is the single biggest determinant in which party does well in midterm elections. Next slide. Those of you that can see at the top blue line is Bill Clinton's approval rating over his 8-year presidency. The light red line that has that straight line down, I don't know if you can see it, that's Ronald Reagan's job approval over 8 years. By the way, that straight line down was Iran-Contra. He was up here, Iran-Contra hit, his approval rating dropped. George W. Bush is in red, and if you look, Barack Obama's job approval is paralleling George W. Bush. Now, why is that important? Well, voters tend to do the same things again and again and again. I said I wasn't surprised that Barack Obama was reelected. I was disappointed, but I wasn't surprised. You know why I wasn't surprised? Because in over 100 years, the only presidents who've been denied re-election had a primary challenge, a third-party candidate, or both. In over 100 years. If you ran for re-election and you didn't have a primary challenge or a third-party candidate or both, you won re-election. Barack Obama didn't have any. So while I was disappointed he won, I wasn't surprised, because based on the historic norm, he should have. And by the way, all the while while he was spending $500 million in the primary building an organization, we went through 23 different debates, moderated by liberal commentators who despise us and cannot stand our belief system. Now, let me just set this aside for a minute and tell you, as the chairman of the state party, I'm one of 168 members of the Republican National Committee. And you know what we at the Republican National Committee have decided? We will never have 23 presidential debates, and they will not be moderated by people who despise us and ask questions designed to embarrass rather than illuminate. You know, some people say your job is to nominate a president. That's not true. Our job is to elect a president. I have 2 minutes left, and I've got about 10 slides, so let me power through these. Congress isn't popular. Let's skip that. Skip this. If I only have 2 minutes, I don't want to go through. Skip this. We have an era of hyper-partisanship, just so you're aware. Jimmy Carter, during his 4 years in office, averaged a 57% approval among Democrats. But he averaged a 30% approval among Republicans. So you take the 30 and subtract it from the 57, and Jimmy Carter had an approval gap of 27 points. Look up at Barack Obama. Barack Obama has averaged an 83% approval among Dems and a 14% approval among Republicans. I don't know any of those Republicans, but he's got an approval gap of 69%. This country is very, very polarized. Democrats like him, Republicans don't. Next slide. Next slide. Americans are overwhelmingly dissatisfied with the country. 7 out of 10 are dissatisfied with the economy. 7 out of 10. That's not bad for the party out of power. Next slide. Few people think it's getting better. Interestingly enough, more people thought it was getting better in January than in March. And you know what? We just got the GDP numbers for the first quarter, and GDP had negative growth. Voters know what's happening in the real world. Next slide. 57% believe we're still in a recession. By the way, I'm not an economist, but we came out of the recession in the fourth quarter of 2009 or the first quarter of 2010. We've been out of a recession for 5 years, but 6 out of 10 voters think we're still in a recession, which tells you something about the economy. A couple more slides and then I'm going to get kicked off. Skip this one. Barack Obama has become Obamacare. If you look, in October of 13, Barack Obama had a 45% approval and a 49% negative, and Obamacare was supported 45-47. Look at the next month, Obamacare dropped from 39 to 55, and Obama's favorable went from 39 to 54. Barack Obama is being defined by Obamacare, which is why you're going to hear the Democrats explain why Obamacare is so good and why it's working, because his job approval is directly related to this. A couple more slides. I know I have to get on. Voters, Republican voters, really don't like Obamacare. 87% don't like, and 72% strongly don't like. By the way, that's 72% of 100, not 72% of 87. Democrats, only 37% like it strongly. Why is that important? Because if you don't like me, you may not vote against me, but if you really, really, really don't like me, you will drive to the polls and make sure you vote against me. Our voters are much more motivated than theirs. Next slide, and then I'll get off. There's a direct correlation between presidential job approval and how the party in the White House does at the congressional level. Remember, I said voters do the same thing again and again and again. You had to have a primary challenge or a third party. Well, you know what? With one exception going back to Franklin Roosevelt, second midterm elections have been horrible for the White House, the party in the White House. George Bush, his second midterm, 2006, we lost control of the House. Ronald Reagan, his second midterm, we lost control of the Senate. Second midterm elections are horrible for the party in the White House, and we're going into a second midterm election. And if you look, the green line is president's job approval, and these lines in white are how many seats were lost in the House. You'll notice in 2002, George Bush had a 63% approval rating, and we picked up 8 seats. By 2006, his approval rating dropped to 39, and we lost 30 seats. I think there's 2 slides left that I'd like to show and then take questions. The president's job approval is a little better in California than it is nationally. Next slide. There are 7,383 seats in state legislatures, 7,383. The next slide. This is what happens to the party in the White House in midterm elections. With the exception of George W. Bush in 2002, the president's party has lost seats in state legislatures in every midterm election going back to Franklin Roosevelt. One last slide. I think Brown's approval rating a little better. The legislature, we don't care about how people hate them. Republicans are very interested in voting. Democrats, not so much. That's why we had a higher percentage of Republicans turn out in June than Democrats, and we're going to have the same higher percentage in November. Maybe off a little bit, but there'll be more motivated Republicans than Democrats. Independents are starting to side with us. Next slide. And the president's got problems among 4 key constituencies that helped him in 2012. Let's just do those and then I'll close with that slide. Next slide. The president got 93% of African Americans. He only has a 78% approval rating among African Americans today. 78 is pretty good, but it's not 93. When you look at Hispanics, he got 71% of the vote, but almost half the Hispanics now are unhappy with the job he's doing. And younger voters, they're dropping off too. That's why Democrats like Henry Waxman and George Miller are not running for re-election, because they know we're going to keep control of the House of Representatives through 2022 when we go through the next redistricting. I think the last slide is just me. Those are my contact info. If you ever have a question, please feel free to call me. Thank you so much for inviting me to be here. Thank you so much for the energy you are bringing back to a party. Thank you so much for calling us back to our roots. And thank you in advance for what you're going to do to help us make 2014 a good year for Republicans.
All right, thank you, Jim. Here's some questions. Some that have already been submitted. I'm going to leave up Jim's contact info on the slide, so please take down his information. That way you have a...
By the way, my email is jimbrulte@aol.com, so I answer my own email too.
Okay, so Jim, first question we have is, the Democrats have often been found to launder tax dollars through and public union money through their candidates, and this really seems to corrupt the process. Please comment on that and how we can get around that.
Would you say that again?
That the Democrats have often been found to launder tax dollars and public union money through their campaigns, and that corrupts the process. And
Yeah, look, yes, the Democrats have done things like in California created an institute at UC to study organized labor, which is just a way of helping organized labor. I find it very corrupting to the process. The way we change that is by eliminating the Democratic majorities in the state legislature. It won't change until we change the people in Sacramento. I actually, when I was a freshman, thought that, you know, if I simply made a good argument on the floor of the assembly, smart people would listen and they would change their mind. They don't want to change their mind. They have a different view of the world than we do, and they are in the process of trying to reorder the world. And by the way, it's not a world that we want to live in for a long time.
okay, so Ron Nearing and Carl DeMaio describe themselves as next generation Republicans. Please explain to us what that means.
I can't explain to you what it means. My job is to help elect Republicans. Ron Nearing is the Republican nominee for Lieutenant Governor. Carl DeMaio is the Republican nominee against Scott Peters. And I'm for the Republican nominees. And they
But
can...
they don't represent what we believe in. They don't follow the planks of the party. Why do we still support them?
Well, okay, well, let me answer your question. First of all,
I mean, Carl DeMaio is gay. He doesn't even support marriage between a man and a woman.
Okay.
Bottom line.
well,
They
first of
should
all,
not get any money.
First of all, let me walk you through, if you want to understand how the process works, I will explain it to you, but it takes more than 2 minutes.
I understand, but bottom
So
line,
you
why are we
understand,
still doing it?
look, I've met Carl DeMaio 3 times in my life. 3 times. But let me tell you something. On his worst day as a member of the House of Representatives, he will be better for this republic than Scott Peters will be on his best day.
But what about
And Scott
Kirk
Peters,
Jorgensen? What
Scott
about
Peters.
Kirk
He'll
Jorgensen?
endorse Jeb Bush is what he's gonna do.
But you know what? At the end of the day, I don't get to control that. If you want Nancy Pelosi as Speaker of the House, then elect Scott Peters.
Lesser
I
of the two
don't.
evils is not winning. That's losing.
You know
We're
what?
not doing that anymore. They're not gonna get our support.
You know what? That's all right.
Well, tell Karl Rove, because you guys are inviting Karl Rove to this state way too much. He's from Texas. Why do Texan consultants care about the prosperity in California? I mean,
There's no prosperity in California.
well, and then you bring in Texas consultants
Well,
to solve the problem.
I don't.
How idiotic is that?
I haven't brought in Texas consultants. I hired an unbelievably talented Republican female lawyer who is running the California Republican Party. She's not a Texan. She's unbelievably good. And I will just tell you,
We're getting
I
undermined
have-
by these guys.
I care about electing Republicans. I didn't choose the nominee in the 52nd Congressional District. The voters of the 52nd Congressional District did. And at the end of the day, my job is to help elect Republicans, because the first vote that gets cast is the worst vote that gets cast. And Nancy Pelosi wants to be Speaker again, and I just think that's a bad idea. Barack Obama came to California about a year ago.
Excuse me, you help
Yeah.
elect people, right? So what are you doing about the districting in the state? Because that's what's screwing us over. You're allowing the Democrats to roughshod our districting so that they only need San Francisco and LA to get elected. So are you involved in the districting?
No, the redistricting was done by a citizens commission. It was passed by the voters of California. I had nothing to do with the redistricting.
Do you have any involvement with the districting at all?
No, the voters of California set up an independent commission.
So it's either the voters' fault or it's not your fault.
Well, look, let me be real clear.
Blaming the voters and then telling us to go do something.
You know, if you want to yell at me, go ahead, but I'm here to answer your question. I will take the blame for 100% of what I do. If you just give me credit for about 2% of what I do, I had nothing to do with the Independent Redistricting Commission. It was done by the voters of California. We have the initiative, the referendum, and the recall, and it was done by an initiative. The districts were drawn by members of a citizens commission when I wasn't even involved in politics.
Okay, so
But let me just say this again. Well, let me say it. I started to say it. Barack Obama came to San Francisco a year ago, and he made a statement that I thought was very illuminating. He said, just think of what I can do my last 4 years, my last 2 years, if Nancy Pelosi is Speaker of the House of Representatives. So let me posit a question for you. Just think of what Nancy Pelosi, Harry Reid, and Barack Obama can do if they're in charge. If at the end, look, I understand that people lose primaries. My job, and by the way, there are some people in the party who actually think they should tell you who you should support. The San Diego County Party actually endorsed Carl DeMaio. My view is, party bosses shouldn't tell voters what to do. Voters ought to decide who they're going to support. Which is why I oppose, as a general rule, party bosses telling people how to vote.
Well, Darrell
My
Issa
job,
did it.
pardon?
Darrell Issa does it.
You know what? You should invite Darrell Issa and ask him.
He said, here, this type of stupidity disqualifies Tim Donnelly from being fit to hold any office anywhere. Donnelly is no longer a viable option for California voters. Darrell Issa, this smear piece.
You should
And
ask.
then they all
Ma'am.
endorsed the guy that voted for Obama. Kashkari voted for Obama.
Yeah, I'm aware of it.
Condoleezza Rice, Jeb Bush, that Mitt Romney, that should disqualify them from office.
Ma'am, I'll say it again. I will take 100% of the blame for what I do. But to blame me for what Darrell Issa does, it's just not appropriate. Although I'll stand here and take it. And by the way, Tim Donnelly's a friend of mine. He lives about 30 minutes from my house.
Jim, I've got a question for you here. We want to kind of focus on behind you. There's the some of the California platform, and I think this is where a lot of folks feel disconnected. This is what the Republican Party puts out. This is what a lot of people in this room really can get behind and support. And we just saw Eric Cantor lose a primary to a candidate who stood up for these principles. So I think the biggest question that we have, I've seen here the most, is why can't you and us and we get behind someone who supports these principles and show that we can do to Nancy Pelosi in our state what they just did to Eric Cantor, have a candidate who stands behind these platform principles. We can get behind with enthusiasm instead of swallowing a bitter pill and saying, I'm voting for the lesser of two evils.
You know, at the end of the day, first of all, I have no trouble with California Republican Party platform. I wasn't chairman of the party when it was adopted. I wasn't even a member of the party when it was adopted. But it's the platform, and I support it. So you understand.
But what are you gonna do now to change that? That's what we wanna know.
I have no intention of changing the platform. The next platform discussion the California Republican Party will have is in the spring of 2016. And I don't think we ought to have a discussion about our platform until 2016 when we have to have one. In terms of candidates, I think local folks ought to decide who their candidates are. And you know what?
Okay, but you know that Citizen Commission was pushed by the UC system and by the big unions in the state. We had no say-so in it. And the Republican Party, your party, which I don't belong to anymore for a good reason for everything you're saying here,
What have I said?
is partly to blame, is mostly to blame for it because they did nothing to stand up against it.
I
They didn't
didn't-
even try to start their own Citizen Commission to fight it. They did nothing, just like they're doing right now with Obama in DC. They're
You
doing
just
nothing.
say you're no longer
has no
Republican
fair
and you're running away from the problem instead of helping it. So by declaring that you're no longer willing to fight and battle for what you believe in, you're turning the cheek and saying, I'm not Republican anymore, so I'm not going to work to make positive changes. So if you're
How
not
does
going to
being a
support the
Republican,
solution,
how does
you need
being
to
a
support the
Republican
solution.
qualify making changes? Why
Then
are
make
you?
positive changes and stay involved.
But we have
Don't run away and
Republicans,
hide.
but we have Republicans who are running for office who are Democrats. Look at Rocky Chavez, he's a Democrat.
Let me, okay, Jim, I think we have a theme here. Is that what we do?
I'm all right with that. Look, I'm all right with that. I think at the end of the day, our job is to be the loyal opposition. And if some of the folks who bear the Republican label haven't done as good a job as they should, you know, they should be taken to task for that. But let me just walk you through this. We're 29% of the electorate. 29. 100% of 29 never gets you to 51. And I am as intimately familiar with the failings of the Republican Party than anyone in this room, because I've seen it from the inside and the outside. But what I will tell you is, at this point in American history, the Republican Party is the best alternative to the people that are in charge. It doesn't mean it'll be the best alternative 20 years from now.
And just because I disassociated myself from the party and changed my label, doesn't mean I'm not going to support them. Because like Michael Savage says, a bad Republican is still better than a good Democrat.
Look, I don't disagree with you. I'm from the William F. Buckley
That's not how you
School.
win elections.
I'm from the William F. Buckley School, and let me be real clear. You get the most conservative candidate that you can elect
She's right here.
where
And they
you are.
smeared her, and we got Rocky Chavez who endorsed
Yeah,
Ash
who's a
Carter,
You know,
Obama voter.
and you know what?
Buckley
Sherry,
ruled completely.
you know, ma'am, Sherry is a friend of mine. I didn't smear her. I never met Rocky Chavez before he was elected, and I will just say this again.
Well, these
If you are
people
upset with somebody,
do these things.
you have every right to be upset with somebody, but I didn't do it. And I'm just, you know, I grew up in a family where you didn't take the blame for things you had nothing to do with.
We know who you're helping.
Jim, we really appreciate you taking the heat tonight.
Look, I don't mind. I think it's important. You know, if you have strongly held beliefs, that's critical. It's just, my point of view is, we have two choices right now. We don't have four choices. Candidates I voted for did not win the primary. Some did, others didn't. But my job is to try to help move all Republicans, because you only think the Democrats in Sacramento are fundamentally out of touch. I can assure you they are. You just have no, I'm gonna tell you what, Jerry Brown being the most conservative Democrat scares me. I've known Jerry Brown. He was governor when I was in high school and college. He's no conservative.
Jim, we're way over on time. We've got to move on, but I think the message that we're hoping that you'll take back to whoever you're working with is that we believe in these principles, and if you'll give us candidates that we can get behind, then I think you'll see the Republican Party grow. Otherwise, when the Republican Party doesn't support these, then when we see third-party candidates come up, that's where it splits our own vote. We just want to make sure we can come together and be one solid group under these principles.
Sure, and let me just close by saying 3 things. 1, thank you for inviting me. Seriously. 2, thank you for re-energizing this party and calling us back to our roots. I mean, people ask me why the Tea Party was created. I think there are 2 reasons. 1, Barack Obama governed as a horribly liberal president, and Republican leaders forgot to walk their talk. And the third thing I'd like to just suggest is, in politics, you don't always get what you want. Sometimes you do have to vote for the least worst alternative, because the worst alternative is the worst alternative. God bless you all, and thank you for your participation.
All right, thank you, Jim. We're going to have to pass the mic over to Steve Brulte.